Hello, let's talk about A Royal Experiment, The Private Life of King George III by Janice Hadlow, a 2014 nonfiction biography book. It's also known in the UK as The Strangest Family, The Private Lives of George III, Queen Charlotte, and the Hanoverians, which is probably a more accurate title. It's a big hunky little book of 618 pages in the ebook form, but goes by incredibly quickly. This is, as they say in the blurb, the surprising, deliciously dramatic, and ultimately heartbreaking story of George III's radical pursuit of happiness in his private life with Queen Charlotte and their 15 children. George III, 1738 to 1820, is probably best known as the king to the American colonies revolted against and split off to become the U.S. Also by me as the king in The Madness of King George, a 1994 movie dealing with his mental illness, played by Nigel Hawthorne with Helen Mirren as Queen Charlotte. That's basically what I came into, other than various other books that I've read of in the time period. I think we get Jane Austen sort of near the end of his reign. You've got Jonathan Swift probably in the early parts. I don't know if it's him or if it's the other Georges. So that's, my general picking up of knowledge in the thing. So George breaks with his own family's history of basically behaving like royals, of being above morality, of treating their children and their family members as sort of pawns. It's not real, not particularly caring about them. All child rearing is just sort of, you press that off with other people. This is him trying an experiment, a royal experiment, where he's seeing the writing on the wall. This is a big time of change. In his reign is the French Revolution, and there's a lot of other more foment of that going on. And indeed, even just in the British system, while he still wields a lots of power of who to appoint and stuff like that, the British Parliament is becoming more and more the more and more the rulers, and the power, the power of kings and monarchy, royalty in general, is shrinking. And part of his radical experiment is a very public political one, which is, instead of being, above morality and doing whatever we want and wielding absolute power, it's like, okay, we don't have absolute power anymore. We are going to form, we're going to form the example of what our society should be. And that the core thing of that is constructing a family, a happy, well-adjusted, loving family. Into this comes a lot of ideas. Hadlow brings in a lot of the stuff of the ideas of the time, of Rousseau and the ideal of child rearing, the radical idea that parents should actually be the ones raising their children. This is obviously the rich people who have the option of just ferrying children off to other stuff. But that kind of a radical notion, and they embrace this, and they've got 15 children to do it with. That this happens. And indeed, it's striking how in the early years they love their children, but as they get older, you get the other side of George III and of his wife Charlotte, who had, all told, a very difficult life, was expected, while still being a very intelligent woman, to be utterly subservient to her wife. And you see this reflected in how the princesses are then treated as they go along. But there's a very strong thing of duty here that you can see all the way to today with QE2, expecting the family to bite down everything, and the duty and the family is the most important thing, and being in your proper place and living up to impossibly high expectations, while all the while being surrounded by eyes and ears. This book is so enlivened by all the reportage that happens from all the members of the royal household who will scurry off, and everything is public. You are always under the scope. And these children who are raised, a part of their education, a part of how bracing them for their adulthood, is the fact that you're on display at all times, and just how that fundamentally really messes up all these people, as also having a mother and a father who, having possibly high standards that you never can live up to, are quick to be incredibly critical and very parsimonious in the amount of praise that they will give. There is kind of the running joke in here is the Prince of Wales is just structurally always going to be antagonistic. The eldest son is always going to be antagonistic to his father. And this happened with his great-grandfather, his grandfather, and his father, who only got to be Prince of Wales. They're always combating with those that came before them, and that happens in spades with the Prince of Wales, who will become George IV in this book. So there's all that kind of dynamics going on. At the same time, we also get George ends up having a mental break. There's various theories that we kind of go through. Seems like mental illness is the top candidate now, of extreme mania, just not being able to kind of control himself, just goes completely off in 1788 and 89, where it becomes, again, another very political matter where this is the head of the country and the Prince of Wales is agitating to take control as a regent. And the people who are in power don't want that to happen because the Prince of Wales, just by nature of his position, has strongly allied with the opposition parties. And so there's great back and to and fro from that. George comes out of that particular stage of thing. Thus ends the movie, The Madness of King George. But later on in life, for the last about 10 years of his life, he is just completely non compos mentis again. And the regency does end up passing over to George IV, who is, who the Prince of Wales, who will become George IV, who is not a well-loved character, is completely the actual child raising that has happened in this book. The sons are all wastrels and fuck-ups of one general thing and another. Hadlow actually does a really good job of kind of an understanding of all this, of exactly what forces shaped these people, including George III, including Charlotte, who goes from being a very vivacious, kind of mentally curious person to being someone at the end of her life who is quite broken down, bitter, and just really unpleasant to be around. Yeah, Hadlow does a really good job of just kind of carrying you along in this story and tracing the various dramas, and you kind of cheering for some of the poor princesses in these books. The princesses, as documented by Fanny Burney, who is one of the ladies of the chamber or whatever, who is a diarist and a novelist, who just kind of documents the just horrible tedium. It's just like, this is like an awful world. If there's anyone you would never want to be in this life at this time, it would be one of these princesses, which George III loves them so much he won't let them go, and he has, at least over them, he has absolute power to hold them in an arrested childhood well into their middle age. Yeah, it's a stunning book. It's a book where I really think about the idea of celebrity coming out of this idea of monarchy, of being examples, of being kind of that focus of the country, focusing on them, and there being some sort of them carrying some kind of moral torch, which then transfers on finally to Victoria, successfully, I guess, and then the monarchy today, but also just a celebrity in general. You don't think about that, but we look up to these people. We construct celebrity as kind of heroes, as people we're going to look up to, we're going to put up on great pedestals, and then we're going to delight in knocking down and screaming at. It's an interesting psychological need that we seem to have as a culture for that. And you can see that this is sort of an origin of this, because the monarchy before this, no, they were just the rulers, and they didn't have to be an example to us. They were the absolute power that you had to do what they say. But now it becomes using it as sort of a moral authority, and at this stage it did not work out. This is like radical happiness became unfortunately radical misery by the end. But wow, it is such a well-told story. I would like to thank Sean, the Book Maniac. He talked about this so much. Sean talked about this book so much over last year in 2021, and kind of caught my attention, so I thought I'd pick it up and start reading, and it's like, I kept on reading and reading and bought the ebook, and I really enjoyed myself. So yeah, thank you for that, Sean. And if you're interested in this, I'm not a person who's particularly, I'm not interested in the monarchy. It's not something that I'm interested in, but I am interested in this idea of celebrity, of that thing, and I'm interested in dysfunctional families because, oh God, my father was George. Wasn't this kind of George, but he was a George, and there's that sort of a thing of a family, you know, a family, especially a British family, that, you know, they love you, but they have these very fixed ideas of where you need to be, and they want to put you in this place, and it's sort of this nightmare story of where your mother and father have those kind of fixed ideas, and they also have the power to hold you there for your life, and how that stifles and twists these people is a good horror story. So if you're looking for monarchy horror story stuff, this is also quite good. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later.